That's Jimmy Stein. I'm Clint Lamb, and this is the Cover Crimson YouTube channel. Jimmy, recruiting is going on all the time, obviously. Always something to talk about when it comes to Alabama recruiting this time of year. But you also got some team stuff going on. We're getting closer to SEC Media Days. We're going to be talking maybe a little bit about that. We'll be touching on it, but we're going to be mostly focusing on the recruiting side, the roster rankings, my roster rankings, getting a reaction to some of those. But let's start with Jalijah Rutledge. So that is a 3-star receiver out of Moody who received an offer from Alabama on, what was it? I guess yesterday was Thursday. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I came down to the beach. I thought we were going to be coming on Friday, so I'm getting my days confused. But Jalijah Rutledge received an offer from Alabama yesterday. That's another receiver out of Moody. He was high school teammates with Aubrey Walker, 5'10", 185 pounds. Tell me what your reaction was to that, and I guess we'll go ahead and dive into the conversation because a lot of fans are concerned that this is them trying to pivot or find someone else because they're slowly being phased out of the Monshun Sales sweepstakes. So just share your thoughts on Rutledge as a player, but then also if you want to, you can touch on that element or aspect as well.
Yeah, I'll say first, this has nothing to do with Monshun Sales at all. Has nothing to do if Monshun Sales commits to Alabama, they would still take Rutledge. I mean, it's not one or the other. It's not, hey, we're short a receiver, because we're talking about two different buckets. I mean, one bucket is your pricey, impactful, spending a lot priority player, which Osani Gales is, which Monshun Sales is. And then this other bucket is your 105 guys that you are signing to complete your 105-man roster that do not have the same financial package that an Osani Gales or a Monshun Sales would have. It's simple for those who are still getting educated on this system. It's this simple. Think more in terms of rev share than NIL. Rev share is the same in every school. Every Power 4 school spends the same amount in rev share. It's around $16 million this year. So Alabama's going to spend $16 million out of athletic department money on the rev share end of things. Maryland, Wake Forest, Kansas, USC, Texas, Ohio State, all also spending around $16 million. It's the NIL number that varies widely from place to place. But think in terms of rev share. You have $16 million to spend on your roster. The NCAA says you can have 105 players on your team. Those 105 players can all have scholarships or not, up to the school as to how many they carry. They just can't carry more than 105 spots on the team, so no more than 105 scholarships. Well, if you have 16 million and you divide that by 105, I'll do the math in a few minutes. But if you have 16 million divided by 105, it's not a whopping amount per player. But if you have 16 million and divide it by 60, now we've got a figure we can work with. Now you got to figure you can go to Monshun Sales with. Now you got to figure you can go to Elijah Haven with if you divide your 16 million by 60. But see, that leaves about 40 to 45 spots on your team of guys that aren't getting rev share money. Guys like that aren't, for instance, Alabama recently tried to sign a wide receiver that I think is going to choose Maryland, primarily because Alabama's like, hey, here's a 105 offer, and Maryland's like, no, here's a priority rev share offer that you're just not going to get at Alabama. Therefore, Alabama's not going to be able to land that kid because he was just the same similar offer that Jalijah Rutledge is getting here. So it all has to be viewed through that lens to make a logical, analysis of this. Because if the analysis is just, hey, Alabama likes this 5'10", 185 guy from Moody that's committed to Appalachian State, and they're taking him and not Monshun Sales. If that's your take, A, yeah, Alabama does look really dumb, but B, that's not even a 3-wood within reality of what it is. This is all about the new system, new recruiting, the new way of doing things. It's not Alabama's way. This is happening at all the Power 4 schools, which is why, like right now, Texas A&M has the #1 class, and they're spending all this money because they have 31 seniors on the roster. They have all this money to spend, and they're spending it. They also have 8 3-stars committed too. 8. So even the school's spending a lot of money, they have to fill out their 105 too. No one is spending a ton of money on 105 players. No one can do that. Not Texas, not Texas A&M, not Miami, not Ohio State. Everyone is doing something similar to what Alabama is doing in terms of a dividing line between, okay, this many players are priority players, and the ones below that are guys that we're using to fill out our 105, that we're going to offer scholarships to most of them, and maybe even a little rev share money to some of them. But that's just basically what the analysis you got to do before you even get to the Jalijah Rutledge tape, which is actually pretty impressive if you watch it from that standpoint. If you're trying to compare him to Monshun Sales, you're just going to be disappointed. But Alabama wasn't, so I don't know why you are. And by you, I mean the people that are going to say that this is some sort of backup play into Sales. No, if Alabama gets Sales, they're taking Rutledge too.
Last year they got Cedarian Morgan, who was a borderline 5-star recruit.
Right.
They got Amari Saab, they got Aubrey Walker, they got MJ Mathis. So it's kind of a similar split. Now, granted, if they got Monshun Sales, they would also have gotten Elijah or Osani Gales as well. But at the same time, it's this split of there's a clear distinction between the two. And Jalijah Rutledge, man, I mean, I will say I agree with you. Watching him on tape, I know I'm not trying to sit here and say he's Jalen Waddle or he's Tyreek Hill or he's Latsier Brooks, but he's kind of in some ways got a similar skill set. Not saying he's going to be that. Once again, I want to clarify that. But you're talking about 5'10", you're talking about 185 pounds. I think he does his best work out of the slot. That's pretty apparent watching his tape, but can also play the Z, in my opinion, one of those outside receiver positions because of his vertical ability, his ability to get downfield and make an impact as far as taking the top off of defenses, the fact that he can go up and win some of those contested catch situations, which is relatively surprising for a kid that is only 5'10". But if you watch his ability to climb the ladder, it's clear this guy easily, I mean, he's got to be closing in on a 40-inch vertical. I don't know what it is. I haven't seen any sort of speed numbers from him. Those are something that I would be interested in seeing, but also some of the other testing numbers. But I just think he's got strong separation ability, has the ability to create yards after contact. You see some return special teams appeal. Yes. And so really it's just a matter of I'm curious to see exactly how fast he is. I'm not saying he's a complete burner. I'm also not saying he's slow, though. I think that I'm watching him and I'm watching Osani Gales, and as far as play speed and stuff, I would probably lean Gales a little bit, but I think that this kid, I mean, he can flat out run. And I love the way that he just plays with this fluidity and has a good feel for playing the position. I mean, once again, I know that when you start talking about some of these kids, it starts running together and you start hearing what sounds like the same thing. But with him in particular, once again, I'm not saying he's any of those other guys, but I understand the appeal. I understand how he could eventually fit in. And I would not be sleeping on this kid as far as being one of those 105 guys. They have identified a lot of them. Obviously, there's a reason Alabama's not just going to take anybody. They're going to try to identify those lower-rated players, those ones that aren't getting the attention, and try to get them in. And hopefully you end up hitting on some. You're not going to hit on all of them, but give yourself strong potential stabs. And I think that Rutledge, if they could end up flipping him from Appalachian State, I think that would be a hell of a get for Alabama at the wide receiver position, because he kind of fits. I liked a lot of what Aubrey Walker did last year. I liked what MJ Mathis brought to the table, and I liked Amari Saab as well. But I think that out of those four players, those three, and then Rutledge, I would say I might like Rutledge more than the others, but I like them all. Don't get me wrong. But I mean, I actually was very pleasantly surprised that Rutledge, when I went and turned on the tape. Now, granted, obviously you are also going after Kyron Caldwell. You're trying to get multiple receivers in this class. I was just surprised at kind of what he brought to the table. I was very impressed with the tape for sure.
Yeah, I think that's a fun game play. And here's one thing: those 4 105 receivers, because now they're assuming Rutledge picks Alabama, and I'm not sitting here telling you guys he's definitely doing that, although I would predict it. I mean, I think that's what will happen. But if you compare Rutledge to Mathis, Saab, and Walker, ranking those 4 guys is fun, because I think any of the 4 could prove to be better than the others. Here's what I would guess. I'll bet at least one of the 4 proves to be really good. And the other 3 are doing what designed to do, help your team practice, help your team have a good scout team, help your team fill out the wide receiver room and fill out your 105 roster with some quality. So that's what it's designed to do. But I bet at least one of the four ends up being a first team rotational player at some point. It won't surprise me if it's Rutledge watching the tape. I was kind of surprised at the athleticism. Probably shouldn't be. If he does flip to Alabama, I bet some coach at Appalachian State's going to fling his beer up against the wall, because I mean they got to be excited to get a kid. I mean, if I'm Appalachian State, I'm excited to get a kid like him. I mean, I think he's at the Sunbelt level would be a plus playmaker type at wide receiver that you're also getting involved in the return game. One other thing about Rutledge, not everybody has this, but this is pretty interesting. I don't think it's directly related, but I'll admit there's probably some indirect relation here. Jalijah Rutledge's sister is Serenity Rutledge. She is a 2028 basketball player at Moody who's fantastic. She's one of the best female basketball players in Alabama. She has an Alabama offer. Ironically, she was offered just about 2 weeks ago by Coach Love's staff with the women's program, and now 2 weeks later, the brother gets offered. I don't want anybody to get the idea that women's basketball at Alabama is the tail that wags the dog kind of thing. That's not the case. I think it might be closer to coincidence than Pauline Love calling Kalen DeBoer saying, "Hey, do you mind offering the brother? I'm trying to get the sister." That doesn't happen. But maybe it's an extra voice in the football building going, I sure wouldn't mind if y'all decided to take the brother as a 105 type guy, because the sister would be an extremely high priority basketball target for Alabama women's basketball. So that's just interesting for fans of Alabama sports to know that there's a package deal is the wrong term. Neither one of these kids are committed to Alabama, and Serenity Rutledge will be a high priority player for numerous power programs across the country. So no guarantees there. But it would be fun to have the Rutledge brother and sister team on campus at the same time. And again, Serenity Rutledge is 2028.
That is very interesting. I don't think you would get that information anywhere else other than Cover Crimson or Locked On Bama with Jimmy, because I certainly didn't know that. And that's information bare minimum worth knowing for sure. And just speaking about the wide receiver room, I'll put it like this. I almost feel like in some ways they're building the wide receiver room, and maybe a lot of these positions, but I mean, especially the wide receiver room from a numbers standpoint, it's starting to feel a little NFL-esque in the sense that you used to have 11, 12, well, really it was 12, 13, 14 wide receivers. Right now, I think they have 10, if you include a lot of those guys that are 105 players that they got last year. And so the numbers are down there, but I think as far as like the guys that you're significantly investing in, you're probably sitting more at like 6. If I had to guess, maybe 7. That feels more 53-man roster-esque. That's typically how many receivers you're going to carry.
I was going to ask you that question if you knew that. What's the typical number of receivers on an NFL roster? 6 or 7?
Some will go as low as 5, depending on how they operate. Some will go 7. I mean, I think 8's pretty rare, if I'm not mistaken.
So 6 is probably the sweet spot.
So 6 is typically like the sweet spot. So I think as far
Makes
as
all sense in the world, then you'd have 6 priority guys, and then you fill out the other 6 spots with 105 guys, hoping that wouldn't it be something if one of your 105 guys or 2 of them end up being first team dudes?
And that's kind of, I think that the goal would be, I mean, you're going to have 6, but if you start running into injuries in the NFL, you can turn to the free agent market. There might not be a ton there, but you can go find more capable bodies or improve your roster at that position if you run into some injuries. On the college level, you got to be a little bit safer, because if you run into injuries, now you got to turn. But at the same time, you're also, from a numbers standpoint, from a practice standpoint, you're bringing in more guys that are potential players. Maybe 1 or 2 of those guys hit. You've invested in 6. Now you're sitting at 7 or 8. Now you can kind of withstand. But it just feels like that a lot of these swings, it's always very apparent. Every time I turn on the tape, I come away thinking, I understand this one. I understand why he's a 105 guy, what the appeal is, how he could maybe end up growing. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you, I will say it once again. I just feel like out of all the guys that I've watched, including Tyler Henderson, who's a JUCO guy who I would put just a probably a notch above those other guys.
Yeah.
I would still put Jalijah Rutledge in that conversation based off of what I saw on tape. Once again, at some point we got to get on here and I got to watch a tape and say, hey, I get it, but this is what I'm seeing that I don't really like. And I'm not telling you this guy's a complete game breaker. He's another Latsier Brooks. He's going to climb, but I am telling you that I think that if you're talking about the players in that 105, he absolutely 1000% deserves one of those spots, in my opinion. So I really like to get. You got anything else on him before we move on?
No, just I was expecting one last thing I noticed about the tape. I think when you're talking about 5'10", 185, and you saw the production, I mean, this guy had like 1,100 yards receiving as a junior.
Yeah.
That's a big number for high school football. Even though Moody did advance in the playoffs, that's a really good program, by the way. Right now, Moody High School is very good. I was expecting, 5'10", 185, 1,100 yards. He's going to run. So I wasn't surprised to see a speedy dude out there. And I agree with you, by the way. I don't think he's Gales, but I think he's in the ballpark. My favorite clip on the tape was a contested catch, because that's what you're looking for. I did some of this for QB Country when I was working with those guys. We did some of the edit to make a huddle tape, for these kids. Because if y'all didn't know it, the prospects themselves, they get the tape from the high school, but they can edit it themselves. And by edit, the most important thing you can do, erase dead time. You don't want dead time. What you're trying to do is make yourself extremely appealing to coaches that are going to watch you for 3 minutes. Yeah. Coaches are going to watch you for 3 minutes. No dead time can be in those tapes. So eliminate, once your part of the play is over, eliminate it. And don't show any walk back to the huddle or walk back to the sideline. Eliminate the dead time. But the order of plays is important. Yeah. My thinking was always this: the first 2 plays, I want the best play I got on the tape first. That was my strategy. The best, because we're doing quarterbacks. So best throw, first throw. It needs to be the wow throw. So now the coach is going to watch the whole tape. Yeah. Because he saw the wow throw first. Your second throw needs to be what people have doubts about you. What are the doubts? And when I watch a 5'10", 180-pound speed guy, my concern as a coach is going to be not big enough, not tough enough. He's a track guy. He's not a football player. There's a clip on there. It's not the first or second clip like I would have put on if I was that kid. But there's a clip on there of him making a contested catch against a bigger DB. I would have put that second, no more than second on the tape, just simply because that's going to be the question with him. Well, it's not second, but it is on there. So he does have a contested catch against a bigger DB on there. And to me, that's kind of what helps sell me on, hey, this is a football player right here. He's not just faster than all the other kids. There's some real ball skills.
I think he worked out for Alabama too. And I'm gonna go ahead and show you. There's some clips that they have posted, not they as in Alabama, but that are on his Twitter. I would highly suggest going to check it out. And he's winning. At least there's 2 that I can think of off the top of my head. There actually might be a couple of more where he's winning some of those contested catches in the back of the end zone, and he's having to compete. I mean, at the catch point, I mean, the defensive back is all over him, and he's going up and over guys. And just for being 5'10", like I said, he's got to have close to a 40-inch vertical. I don't know what it is, but he is compensating for the fact that he is only 5'10", 5'10 and a half. So once again, not telling you that he's going to turn into some superstar. I have no idea. Obviously, if you were to say, Clint, would you rather have him or Monshun Sales? That answer's pretty easy. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and tell you, no, I'd rather have this guy. But that's what I always try to do, especially when it's very clear what the player is as far as 105. I go to try to identify what's the appeal. What does the coaching staff see? I try to look through it, at it through their lens. And he's one of those that was pretty it was pretty clear pretty quickly. And I agree. I'm also one of those guys when I'm watching a highlight tape, that's normally where I start. And then if I can get full game tape, that's where I really feel like I get a good feel for a player. But when I turned it on for him, and what I'm always trying to do is, how deep does it go? Like, how many plays in before it really starts to tail off and, they're not doing something that really wows me? Sometimes, like a 5-star, it's typically like their tape's just littered with play after play. And some of these lower rated guys, you'll turn on the tape and they might have one that's kind of jaw dropping or 2. But the difference usually One of the differences is that it's just the consistency, it's the amount that they put on tape. And for Rutledge, I thought he was at a pretty solid place where, it was running, several plays in, and he was still doing things that impressed me. And granted, I think he did space some things out. But yeah, I like the player overall. Makes a lot of sense. Hopefully they can flip him. I would certainly think that he would be the perfect type of guy to fit into that 105 if you're Alabama. Let's talk a little bit about these roster rankings. So I think that we talked about up until 30, if I'm not mistaken, for me.
Okay.
So we're going to dive into 31 through 35, which I've already revealed, and we'll talk about that. I know you've kind of done some more of yours as far as releasing those, so I'd love to get your reaction. But we'll start with 31. That's where I ended up putting Steve Boonewa. And as I have told people, I actually don't feel great about this. I didn't change it because it was kind of where, based off of, I've said that this felt like vibes. It's projecting, but what I didn't want to do, kind of the entire point of this exercise for me, was to draw that line in the sand and make predictions. And I feel like with him, I slid him into a place where I don't really like him. What I mean by that is, if I feel like he is going to be a part of the rotation, I believe that he is going to be a very impactful player. He might be a little bit inconsistent. You might see some, him not doing the right or playing the right assignment, him giving up a run or something like that. That might happen. But I think as far as disruptiveness, just things that make you go, wow, opposing offenses, opposing offensive linemen just absolutely hating anytime he's on the field. I feel like he would be, if he is going to be a part of the rotation, and it's, hopefully he's got the stamina and they can play him. I think they will. Then I feel like I would end up having him higher on this list if I'm truly predicting that. But if he's one of those guys where a lot of what he did in the spring was more of the result of a lot of the injuries and Jeremiah Beeman coming back from an injury, if you start seeing Edric Hill get back healthy and Jeremiah Beeman come back from his injury, and, a lot of these guys, Terrence Green, I think, was a little bit banged up, and he ends up not even being a part of the rotation really, or very minimal role, then 31 is way too high. So I just didn't like the fact that, would I have put him as a top 10 player? No. Would I have put him even in my, 11 to 20? Maybe not, but I certainly would have had him quite a bit higher than I do at 31. But I think that was one of those where I was just so conflicted as I was working my way through it that I just stuck him in the middle, where it's like, okay, if he ends up being good, I can take the cop out and say, hey, I had him at number 31. That wasn't bad. Yeah, he played at like the 15th best player, but I wasn't as low on him as others. But I was also safe, and it wasn't, hey, you've got him at 15. He wasn't even a part of the rotation. How stupid are you? You know what I'm saying? I don't like doing that. That was the whole point of this exercise, is to avoid that. And so, but I do really like Steve Boonewa this year, and I do overall think he's going to be a part of the rotation and be a very impactful defensive lineman for Alabama.
I do agree that he will be a part of the first team rotation. I do think, though, that there's two most likely outcomes for Steve this fall, like the two most likely outcomes. One of them is that at the end of this fall, a likely or a possible outcome, let's say a possible outcome with the best chance of happening. Maybe we end this fall going, there were flashes, but he's still 1 year away. And that would make sense based on his lack of experience, and he's still sort of new to football, to say nothing of a whole culture. I won't be surprised if in December we're saying he's still a year away. We saw some flashes, and his noisy spring was the product of just London Simmons not being out there and Jeremiah Beeman just not being able to full go, and Edric Hill wasn't a full go, and his spring was that. Here's another possible outcome that I would consider, if not the second most likely, the most likely, and that's breakout star.
Yeah.
I mean, breakout star. Like, at the end of the year, we're saying, because I'm really confident about Davin Tompkins. He's going to be good. Maybe at the end of the year, we're saying Tompkins and Boonewa are two of the best defensive linemen in this league. I think that's maybe the most likely outcome or second most likely outcome. But that is a pretty broad range, though, isn't it? If I say,
oh, yeah,
maybe he's a year away, maybe he's a breakout star. I think he will be a breakout star. I just think the question is it 2026 or 2027?
Yes.
I mean, to me, it's not, hey, is this guy ever going to be any good? Oh, yeah. is it 2026 or is it 2027? I guess ultimately that's what I'm saying. That's what made him a really difficult player to rank. I have him higher than you, not substantially. I had him at 22.
Okay.
You might be closer to right at 31. I'm going to say this. I found it hard to rank him because I'm not 100% sure his spring wasn't the product of just a lot of opportunity he had, because we didn't have as many healthy guys out there, and we certainly will in the fall. But I'm pretty convinced of this. He's a star player. Is it going to be 2026 or is it going to be 2027?
That is, as I was working my way through this, and I was disappointed. Like when I went back and I got to 31 to 35 because I'd made this list. It's all ready to go weeks ago at this point. When I looked at him, I was like, man, I didn't like how you split that. And a lot of people say they understand, like if you see these two extremes just split down the middle, and it's like, no, that's not really a prediction.
Because that's not an answer.
Yes, correct.
It's not an answer.
So so as I was thinking about it and disappointed in myself, I was like, where would I have actually put him if you're predicting the breakout? And I will say, if the breakout if it actually hits, he is a top 10 talent on this roster.
I agree.
Top 10 to 12. And so, but I wasn't willing to go that far because I think there's going to be way too much inconsistency. As you know, it was kind of like Christian Barmore, where you saw the flashes of absolute brilliance from him, but Nick Saban kept talking about like he's just got to become more consistent. You can't be, he'll make the splash play, but he'll also kind of play some hero ball, try to go rogue, and now you left a gap uncovered. Now it's an 80-yard touchdown, and you just got to clean that up. And so I think there will be some of that where I can't rank him that high. I think he would certainly be up there if he has the breakout that I think he can. I think going into 2027, I would have him continuing to climb and being that caliber of player. But I think 22, I was thinking somewhere just outside of my top 20 probably would have been a good place for him. So I love that you have him at 22. That makes a lot of sense. I think we are both massive fans of Steve Boonemois. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out. Just understand that no one needs to jump on. I guess I'm protecting myself here too, because we're agreeing here, but no one needs to jump on you. If he ends up just not even being a part of the rotation, understand that that's one of those that had they been healthier at that position in the spring, we would probably have a much better gauge as far as where he's actually at, but him getting the first team snaps and stuff. And then what you saw from him on A-Day, anybody that was in attendance, I do think he got winded fairly quickly, and that's something that it might be on a very limited basis. Maybe that's where he ends up fitting in at 31, is that he's out there for, 7, 8, 9 snaps a game, but he's just wreaking havoc. You just can't get much more from him than that as he's trying to get in better condition. Maybe that would be, it's like, okay, you can't rank him too high with that small of a role, but he is wreaking havoc and making an impact and maybe, sacking the quarterback, whatever the case may be, tackle for loss. So that'll be very interesting to kind of see where he ends up sliding in. Let's talk about number 32 for me. It was Marshall Pritchett. He was my tight end 3, obviously behind Josh Ford at 18 and Caleb Edwards at number 11. And I think Marshall Pritchett's going to be a big part of this rotation. I know you do too. You think he's going to be a big part of the passing game. This is one of those where, I really, really like Alabama's tight end room, not only because of what you have at the top, but also what you have there with Marshall Pritchett, because he continues to get bigger and stronger, great work ethic, has really embraced the fact that he was more of a receiving threat coming out of high school, has always shown a willingness as a blocker. But I think as far as working on his craft and trying to become a more effective blocker rather than just a willing, from an effort standpoint, blocker, I think he's probably made some strides there. And so I'm awfully high on Marshall Pritchett as well.
Yeah, we have him ranked about the same. I had him at like the 38. I thought, you're 32, right?
Yes.
And I've talked about this a number of times, and it's oversimplification. And I'm sure, Richard Owen, so I'm sure listens to the show. So, hey, Richard, how are you? I like if Alabama's in 12 personnel. I just love the idea of, and again, it's too simple, but always have Caleb Edwards in the 12 personnel. The 1 and the 2. The 1 is always Caleb Edwards, because I wouldn't take him off the field. I think he's one of the best players on the football team this fall. Always Caleb Edwards. And hey, if it's a run play, the 2 of the tight end 12 is Josh Ford, and if it's a pass play, it's Marshall Pritchett. Now, no one's going to do that because that's really dumb, because you're just literally telling the defense what the play call is. So you have to self-scout. You have to make sure that that the tight end rotation isn't a tell, but at the same time, it's your best players on the field doing the best stuff. And when we're running the ball and Caleb Edwards and Josh Ford are on the field, watch out. But we're going to have to throw it out of 12 personnel too. And in my mind, as good as I think Caleb Edwards is, and as good as I think Josh Ford is, I think Marshall Pritchett is going to be the most advanced route running and pass catching tight end on the team. And I'll be real interested to see if he actually leads the tight end room in targets and receptions, because I don't think he'll play as many snaps as Edwards or Ford, but he could still lead the tight end room in receptions and catches. I'm with you, Clint. If I'm Marshall Pritchett, I'm working so hard on the physical part, just simply because, dude, the NFL could come calling for you once you develop as a blocker. Because I think the pass receiving skills to play at that level are going to be there. It's just a matter of the physical nature of it. 5 for 5, I think, is really going to help a kid like him too. 5 years of college might really pay off for guys who have to gain physicality. One last thing I'll say about tight ends and that 5 for 5 rule. Tight ends are made, not born. I really believe that. That's why the NFL is full of 3-star prospects that are excellent NFL tight ends. Why? They were made in the lab. They're made at Tight End University, that thing that Travis and George Kittle do in Nashville every summer. Tight ends are made, not born. Running backs, they're born. E.J. Crowell was a running back when he was 2. He was born that way. But tight ends are made. So 5 for 5 is going to benefit guys, especially guys like Marshall Pritchett.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And you do see, I think a lot of times the highly rated tight ends are the ones that are like athletic marvels, from a body standpoint. You're thinking like Darnell Washington, coming out, just an absolute freak of an athlete, massive body. Was easy to see why he was a 5-star. You look at a lot of these guys, a guy like Caleb Odom, who was considered a tight end coming out, is now playing tight end for Ole Miss after wanting to play receiver at Alabama. But like he was this receiving mismatch problem. That's what they really look for. You look at Amari Nablack, that was another one that just was more of an athlete, fit the athletic profile. And then you say, okay, can he, he's got the frame to get bigger. And they always look through the lens of the receiving side of it. And it's like, okay, the truly great tight ends, though, especially if you're trying to get that advantage as far as going 12 personnel and stuff, you want the mismatches, but you also want the guys who can be more balanced options for you. And so despite the fact that Caleb Edwards, he was a top 10 tight end in his respective class, but he was outside of the top 100 recruits, outside of the top 120, I believe. Marshall Pritchett was a lowly rated 4-star, with a 3-star according to some places. Max Sutter at one time, he was an industry top 100 recruit. I think he ended up falling out of the top 100 some places. I think on 3 rivals had him at like outside of the top 200 as far as their stuff. I just think that there's a reason that if you look at that position, the tight end position, as far as the recruiting rankings of each position, Max Sutter is the only one who anybody had in any service as a top 100 recruit. There was one that left him in the top 100. And there are a bunch of guys like Michael Nabuff and Oakley Keegan and Jay Lindsay and, Jack Samarco and Danny Lewis, all these 3-star guys. And then the ones, it's a lower rated 4-star like Marshall Pritchett. It's a pretty, obviously Caleb Edwards, he's expected to be Alabama's top tight end. He was the one that was rated the highest amongst that group. But I just think that I think they put too much on the athletic side of it and not enough on the blocking prowess.
Yep.
And I think that creates a situation where a lot of these lower rated players could end up far exceeding where their recruiting ranking was.
So true.
And you have anything else on that before we move on?
No, it's an excellent point. Everybody, even the coaches, the rankers, the fans, they're fascinated with the tight ends who catch balls. But you've got to be tough, big, and physical to get it done there. And that's why guys like Caleb Odom and Amari Nablack and Jaleel Billingsley, that's why guys like that, there's a lot of fails there because they never fully develop the physical side. They just want to run around and catch balls. Well, you're not wide receivers anymore, and
you're not Mike Evans. You're not Mike Evans.
That's right. So, and the physical guy, it's kind of like guards. They're just never going to get their due from the rankers or the fans but go ask coaches about him.
Right.
You're not going to be able to run the ball without him.
That's 100% accurate. Sitting at number 33 for me was Carmelo O'Neal. We've talked extensively about the importance of cornerback 3. It was important last year, obviously, with Dijon Lee acting as that cornerback 3, or he ended up overtaking as the starter, and then it was Damani Jackson. It was back and forth there on top of Xavier Brown. You're talking about previous years, Eli Ricks and Tyrion Arnold. Kool-Aid McKinstry was the number 3 to both Josh Jobe and Jalen Armour Davis. Every single year for like the last 5 or so years, that cornerback 3 has played a pivotal role for Alabama, where they've seen significant snaps. And so I felt comfortable. Number one, yes, I do think that Jordan Edmonds could be cornerback 4 and could actually end up getting surprisingly more playing time than maybe even I think. I do fully think that's a possibility because of the buzz that he generated. We heard great things about how he was progressing in the spring, but I still think Carmelo O'Neal, the coaching staff, loves him. I think from, just a size and length standpoint, he's another unicorn out there where they've got several. I think that he is going to play quite a bit. I think he's going to make an impact. And so I'm very high on Carmelo O'Neal for sure. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, it looks like he's cornerback 3 exiting spring. What's interesting to me is if he holds on to that role, like you said, that means he'll play a lot. We'll see. By playing a lot, that means probably first quarter of the first game. I mean, I think if you're cornerback 3, you're probably in the first quarter of the first game. So that's a real significant role. Looks like he's going to have that spot. It'll be him or Jordan Edmonds. Right now it's him. And if he's cornerback 3 this year, Clint, I mean, probably Xavier Brown moves on to the NFL after 2026. Everybody gets knocked up a spot. I mean, knocked up a notch. So Carmelo O'Neal could be a starting corner opposite Dijon Lee in 2027. And boy, that have to be the largest corners in college football history. If those are your bookend starters at cornerback, gosh, this guy is so big. Obviously had a good spring to come from Mercer and just immediately sort of become cornerback 3. And here's one we don't talk about. Chuck McDonald, who me and you both like a lot, he's the number 2 Husky. If it wasn't for like Carmelo O'Neal showing out, you never would have been able to move somebody like Chuck McDonald. He'd have had to stay at corner. But Carmelo was so good, Jordan Edmonds so good right off the bat, Chuck could move to where he's a second team guy so he can get in the game and get some snaps backing up Red Morgan. So, boy, what a great spot. I have a last thing I'll throw in. I just understand from the locker room, Carmelo's got a real interesting personality. I think he's one of the bigger personalities on the team, and you can always use guys like that.
100%. Great point. I didn't realize that, but that's good to hear. Checking in at number 34 for me was Xavier Griffin, and I felt comfortable putting him here because with like Steve Boonewa, you see the ceiling, and it's like I feel like I was middling it there. But if Boonewa ends up playing 7, 8, 9 snaps a game, it's the same logic that I'm essentially applying to Xavier Griffin, which is I think he's going to be an impactful player. I think he's going to be worth ranking this high. But based off of him being more of a situational player, I don't think that I can justify putting him higher than cornerback 3 like a Carmelo O'Neal, who's going to be rotating a lot and seeing a huge role. Or, some of these guys, a Marshall Pritchett being tight end 3, but also being a guy who we expect to play a massive role, probably play more snaps than Xavier Griffin. But I think as far as the freshmen are concerned, I think he's my, third highest ranked freshman. And I think it's because you're going to see a situational role out of him as a pass rusher. Now, granted, that could be dictated if you're getting the secondary complementary stuff from a Des Zulu, from a Devin Tompkins, some of those players, maybe you wouldn't feel the need to have Xavier Griffin emerge as one of those options. Maybe if Justin Hill's taking the next step in his development. But if they're looking or searching or hunting for someone that can get after the quarterback and really play a strong complementary piece in those obvious passing situations to a Yanze Pierre, I think having a player like Xavier Griffin, based off of what he showed in the spring, he would certainly be a candidate that you might turn to. And based off of what we're hearing about how big he's gotten, he's added great size and mass and strength. I think he's a lot more physically ready to contribute in year one than I originally thought he would, be where he would be at. So I'm looking forward to seeing how he comes on year one as well.
Yeah, boy, all great points there. He's in the inside linebacker room. Not all the fans, because I see comments all around message boards and social media. A lot of people don't realize that. They just think of him as an edge. But no, he's he's with the inside linebacker group.
Yes.
I mean, his coach is Chuck Morrell, not Christian Robinson. I mean, in terms of like who his coach is. Now, does he take snaps on the edge? Yes, he does. And I had a very difficult time ranking Xavier Griffin for the same reasons Clint did. It's like, okay, if he's inside linebacker full time, I have him too high because I can't imagine him leapfrogging Duke Johnson, Abdul Sanders, Caden Jones, Luke Metz, QB Reese. I can't imagine him cutting into their snaps. I think they're just ahead. Now, put him on the edge. Now, I can see him playing a lot. There. So, as an inside linebacker, to me, is like a red shirt. As an edge guy, I think he's played in the first quarter of the first game. He might be too good to keep off the field in that role right off the bat. And Alabama could use some edge help. And maybe if you have Hill and Griffin emerge at Wolf, now Pierre can spend more time at the other edge, which I understand they would like to do. So it's tough to rank him because if you put him with the red shirts, you know, the guys that you just won't see much of, you could be way wrong. If you say, no, he's going to be with the ones, again, you could be way wrong here. But I will say this. Last thing I'll say about him, I would be willing to bet on FanDuel or whatever. I'd be willing to bet that this is a starter in 2027, year two. Too good to keep off the field.
And once again, I know that USC had a strong offer on the table when he was committed there. I know that he wanted to play at Alabama. His family grew up, you know, being Bama fans, so it made sense. But he's one of those guys that I'm sure they invested in pretty heavily. And once again, that's not the logic of this coaching staff to not expect. Number one, that's also kind of helped me as far as just because they kind of expected doesn't mean they're going to get year one contributions from everybody. But it tells me that the coaching staff saw something in him where they thought we can get some sort of year one contribution and kind of go ahead and start getting a return on our investment. But what they damn sure didn't do was bring him in to sit for multiple years. So if he's not a 2026 guy, he is going to be a 2027 guy. I have no doubt about that. And granted, based off of some of their misses as far as at the Wolf position, as far as recruiting and stuff, it is possible, depending on how he continues to grow, that he ends up being a player who they move to Wolf, and then maybe eventually they move him back to off-ball linebacker, or maybe he stays at Wolf permanently. I do know that they need some help there, and I think Jamarian Matthews could end up being a Wolf long-term, but he just, to me, his skill set fits. The fact that he could even maybe play some Wolf is really encouraging, or he's going to play Wolf, so we know he's capable of doing it at least to some extent. The fact that you have that out of him, that can provide a lot of flexibility for you if he also brings the Bandit skill set and he ends up playing Bandit down the line, because those become a lot closer and you can kind of alternate a little bit in how you move them around and do different things. I just think it can provide a lot of versatility, but I still think Jamarian Matthews long-term is a Bandit. That's just my opinion.
I agree.
Maybe so
if Kane's listening, next spring, Matthews to Bandit, X to Wolf full time. That's the way I would do it.
If they chose to do it. Now, a lot will probably depend on who they add in the transfer portal at Wolf. You know, Justin Hill is probably going to be expected to take over as a starter. I think they'll fully plan to bring in somebody who's kind of a co-starter or bare minimum, a heavy rotational piece. What I would describe as a Jordan Ross type of player. If he would have been brought in this year, do I think he would have been brought in to start necessarily? Maybe, but it's also possible that they just really wanted a strong rotation. Maybe you could move Jan Zapier to Bandit some. You could play him at Wolf. Maybe he plays a little bit of Bandit with his length. I mean, he was 6'5", like 240 pounds. So I think they maybe could have got him to 250 or so and had him playing some Bandit with some length and stuff. I just think that you're looking at that type of player. And so maybe you don't feel the need, granted from a depth standpoint, you know, it depends on how Tyler Younger and Jeremiah Beverly and some of those guys, they're more developmental pieces, so not probably expecting a lot from them in 2027. It would just depend on who all they ended up adding. But, yeah, I think that is entirely possible that Xavier Griffin could end up playing Wolf. and I think he would make a damn good one. I think he's going to be a good off-ball linebacker or a good wolf. He's just a
it's like
heck of a
Jihad
football
Campbell.
player.
To me,
Yeah.
I mean, the comparisons have always been Jihad with him.
Yes.
And I would say the same thing about especially junior year Jihad, dominant off-ball linebacker, also would have been a dominant down-to-down edge, if that was his full-time spot too. That's the way I see X.
Well, and what a lot of people don't realize is even what you saw from Jihad Campbell when he became that true hybrid player, the one that they were. You have to remember, Deontay Lawson went down with an injury against Oklahoma, a season-ending injury. They had started to move or play Jihad Campbell a lot more at Wolf as they had lost Q Robinson. Keanu Coote was supposed to be involved in that rotation. He ends up leaving the team. There was a bunch of things that ended up happening at that Wolf spot. But then once they started losing, or once they lost Deontay Lawson for the season with an injury, now you had Justin Jefferson. You didn't have Deontay Lawson at the time. You didn't have Nakai Hill-Green. So they had to move Jihad and make him more of an off-ball linebacker. And that's where you started to see Jamarian Latham go from being more of a bandit to playing some Wolf. It was out of necessity. Otherwise, I think Jihad Campbell would have continued to see a lot of his snaps at Wolf. And, so when you look at that role, understand that it was altered towards the end of the season once injuries really started to take place at off-ball linebacker. But, yeah, I think that you'll see even more of a versatile hybrid role from Xavier Griffin, regardless of if he ends up being an off-ball linebacker or a Wolf. Sitting at number 35 for me was Kevin Riley. And the reason that I have him here, I have Daniel Hill sitting at 23. I have EJ Crowell sitting at 20. Those are my top two running backs. I have Kevin Riley as my running back 3. I'm not ready to elevate Trayshawn Brown just yet there. I haven't heard or seen enough from A.K. Deer to put him as that RB3. We've heard from people that in that second scrimmage, Kevin Riley was the most impressive running back out there. He didn't look great on A day. It was an off day for him. Don't think that should be a representation for how he progressed this spring. I think the size and strength that he's added in the offseason is really going to help him. But at the same time, if I'm expecting the most efficient, effective running back to be E.J. Crowell, and I think he's going to be this special talent that really elevates Alabama's run game, you got to be projecting or predicting a significant role for him. And then Daniel Hill, I expect him or wouldn't be shocked if he led the team in snaps and starts and carries and touches. He might not be as efficient or as explosive and really provide the excitement of Crowell, which is why I have Crowell ranked higher. But I'm still fully anticipating that Daniel Hill is going to have a sizable workload, maybe the biggest workload amongst the running backs. So then it becomes, okay, as far as RB3, where does Kevin Riley fit into that mix? And I certainly think that he is, which is why I'm willing to put him at 35. But is it going to be a big enough workload where I could justify ranking him ahead of some of these other guys? Or do I think it's more of the situational equivalent of like an Xavier Griffin, where I can put you at a certain place because you're certainly going to be impactful, you're certainly going to get your snaps or your opportunities, but it's not going to be a big enough workload where I can justify anything other than higher than 35. But I do want it to be reflected that based off of what we heard about him in the spring, he's coming along nicely. And at this point in time, I would probably predict him to be RB3.
Yeah, I'm glad you just used the word predict there, because to me, there's two different ways to do the list. There's two different ways to go about it. But to me, it can either be evidence-based or a prediction on what we think is going to happen.
Right.
And I tend to want to be more evidence-based, because if I do nothing but a prediction, it's going to be wrong so much of the time. Just the nature of predictions, they're not always going to work out. Some of it's going to be wrong. If it's evidence-based, I think it's more likely to be correct. So I try to be evidence-based. And by that, I mean, look, there's evidence that Kevin Riley's pretty good. Now, there's also evidence that he's not that great, because he had a big opportunity and was not productive. But there were flashes of big-time production. There were evidence that he can actually play at a high level. I think with him, it's gaining consistency, this weight gain, getting some better blocking up front, just normal maturation, year-to-year development. But I'll say that to ask you this. If I told you this, and I know you know it's true because we talked about it before, last year in the opener against Florida State, Jay Miller was injured and out. So Alabama started Richard Young. A lot of people forget that. Richard Young was the starter in the Florida State game. But they also played Daniel Hill And a surprise was Kevin Riley.
Yes.
All 3 running backs played in the first quarter of the first game. Richard Young, then Daniel Hill, then Kevin Riley. If they play 3 in the first quarter versus East Carolina, who do you think they'll be?
The 3 I just predicted. And when you asked me this question or a similar question before, you asked how many I was predicting to play in the first quarter, and I said 4. And I said that because I do think that based off of talent, off of the fact that he stuck around, I wouldn't be shocked if they also gave A.K. Deere some opportunities. But as far as the top 3 guys, it would be Kevin Riley because of what he's done. He's the most veteran guy, the second most, or he's one of the most veteran guys. Came in the same recruiting class as Daniel Hill, so I guess he is tied for being the most experienced guy in that room. Daniel Hill is certainly going to be in that conversation against East Carolina, and probably going to start the game. But then we have talked extensively. We feel like it's going to be E.J. Crowell getting some opportunities early in that football game. So that would be the 3 that I would predict.
Yeah, I think they're going to be so excited about Crowell. I bet they kind of come in with this plan. I just sort of foresee this on the sideline. Gillespie comes in with this plan that Hill is first and Riley's second, and A.K. Deere is third because he's older, and you got Crowell down there at 4th. He might come in with that plan, like, hey, that's how they practice, and that's what it looks. And then the game kicks off, and I bet he's busting to put Crowell in. You know what I mean? I mean, I think there's going to be, just like the fans, I think there's going to be some excitement on the coaching staff's part to get Crowell in the game early. Well, but I know we're supposed to be talking about Kevin Riley, but I think you can't talk about Kevin Riley without talking about the room. The 100%. Room and where he fits and the other guys in the room and how Kevin Riley is going to fit. One last thing I'll say, stylistically, I think Kevin's a little different than the other guys.
He is.
And that helps him out because, you want to give the defense different looks. And a disappointment for me last year that Kevin needs to fix, Kevin Riley's a home run hitter. He didn't hit any home runs.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I don't even know that he hit a double. I mean, dude, you're a home run hitter. And we need to see that. I think even adding Crowell and Trey Brown, I believe Kevin Riley is still the fastest running back on the team. So, dude, it's time to put one over the wall, man.
Yeah, it definitely is. And one of the things that I thought Kevin Riley kind of struggled with at times was vision. He's got to show that more of that. He's got the explosiveness side of it. And I do think that, granted, early on, there could be some growing pains from the offensive line. But, I think as the offensive line gels, hopefully it continues to get better throughout the course of the season. I could see a guy with his slashing and explosive ability being effective, but he's got to see it. If you're going to run a lot of zone, which they're going to want to do, I think that's one of the reasons they went after a Hollywood Smothers, a reason they went after Raleigh Brown. Those are 2 guys from a vision standpoint, an explosiveness standpoint. Obviously, Hollywood Smothers doesn't have the home run hitting ability of a Raleigh Brown or a lot of these Bama backs, if I'm speaking honestly. But he's got great vision, kind of creates for himself. It's very clear what they were looking for. And Kevin Riley brings one of those elements as far as the explosiveness. And he's a guy who's willing to take the fight to opposing defenses or opposing defenders. For being a guy his size, he's willing to be as physical as he possibly can. Hopefully adding some mass will allow him to have a little bit more oomph behind that attacking mentality. But I think that the last thing, if Jam Miller doesn't get hurt, I don't think you see anything close against Florida State that we saw last year in the opening, drive or quarter or whatever, because it was very clear that he was the established guy. But behind him, if you remember Ryan Grubb, he wasn't talking about anybody really stepping up. It was the Jam Miller show, and then everybody else, you saw moments but lacked consistency. And so I think they went into that game thinking, well, we're just going to see what we got here. Maybe we ride the hot hand. Maybe one of these guys emerges as a gamer, and none of them really did. So, they just continued to kind of give all of them opportunities other than Richard Young, who kind of fell out of favor pretty early in the season, not against Florida State, but I think by Wisconsin, he was starting to tail off a little bit. But I think this year will much be the same approach. I don't think so far there's been a Jam Miller who has established himself as the guy. And so I think it's going to be hey, let's get them all out there. Let's see what they all do. How they're, performing. And then maybe we can try to make a decision on this pecking order based off of when the lights actually come on. And it's time to actually do it live against somebody else. And so that'll be a very important first quarter, in my opinion, for Alabama's running back room. That could end up dictating quite a bit. If Daniel Hill is just rolling, or if EJ Crowell gets out there for some of his opportunities and he's performing at an extremely high level, that could end up dictating how this running back room is shaped. And so, if they put Kevin Riley out there early against East Carolina and he, for one reason or another, it's kind of like A-Day, he doesn't perform at his best, not saying he'll just get stashed away and that didn't work. I mean, I'm sure he'll continue to get some opportunities, but that can really affect his role for the remainder of the 2026 season. So anybody that thinks due to opponent and stuff, that's not going to be an intriguing game. If you know what to look out for, that's going to be something to watch, because I do think that it's going to be, we talk about the quarterback battle and how you might end up seeing both players early. Yeah, it's possible, but I also think they're going to want to make a decision week of the game. They're going to roll with that guy. Obviously, if he struggles, they might move off of it. But I think running back a lot more so is going to be one of those, well, let's get him out there and just see who rises to the top. And so that first couple of quarters is going to be pretty competitive. Jimmy, do you have anything else before we hop out of here, brother?
It's excited, man. A little closer to the season. You believe next week when we're back here on air next week on Cover Crimson, it will be Big 12 Media Days. That's next week. Tuesday and Wednesday.
I didn't realize that was next week.
Tuesday and Wednesday are Big 12 Media Days. Now, is that exciting? Some of you that listen should know, because y'all care about Alabama or the SEC, or maybe you do care about all of college football. I know I do. I know Clint does. So I'll be watching Big 12 Media Days with rapt attention. I think that name Brendan Sorsby might come up, but I also think that I'm just curious. It's an interesting league because it's fair wide open.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And with Drew Mustamaker moving on to Oklahoma State.
Love them as that's my sleep. I'm not picking Oklahoma State to win the league. I don't have that level of guts to do that, but they are my sleeper team, and they only won 3 games last year. I think Oklahoma State was 3-9. I would put them on 9-10 win alert, and that could put them in the Big 12 championship game. I'm going to pick Texas Tech to win the league, but
yes,
I think Oklahoma State is a contender.
Well, they got that North Texas running back, they got the quarterback, and the head coach, and I think that trio is really going to help their offense get things turned around. And defensively, I don't know I don't know exactly how good or not good they were last year, but they've typically been pretty good defensively when I've actually kept up with it. So, good stuff today, Jimmy. Great conversation. We hope everybody enjoys their 4th of July weekend. We wanted to hop on here and at least give you guys a little something to chew on. We know a lot of you guys are traveling, so we just appreciate everybody for being here. We appreciate all the support as always. If you haven't already, like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and then get on over to rowback.com. Use the promo code Crimson20 to get 20% off your order, and we will talk to you guys soon.